Welcome back and thank you for staying with us on the show. Now, the Nigeria's currency, the Naira, has witnessed a change in fortune, emerging as the worst performing currency in the world in the month of April. A new Bloomberg report shows. Now, Bloomberg said Naira trajectory has taken a downturn trend as the local currency, which was once hailed as top performing in March, has begun another round of freefall. The report published on Friday stated that with this slide, the Central Bank of Nigeria is poised to increase the country's interest rate in its next monetary policy meeting slated for May 21st. The Naira on Friday fell to 1 month low of 1,470 Naira per dollar on the parallel market, also known as the black market, following dollar shortage and the activities of speculators. So, traders attributed the decline of an increased demand for dollars used for the purpose of education, health, and tourism. So this is, of course, what we will be focusing on, which is the poor performance of the Nigeria's Naira. And our guest is an Economist financial analyst and lead researcher at Steward Asset Management Limited, Steve Nwachukwu, who is joining us via Zoom to dissect the situation of the Naira. Good morning, Steve. All right. Basically, we'll definitely be dissecting all of this. Are you with us? Good morning, Steve. I would need you to unmute your mic because I can't really, we're not hearing you. I hope that, of course, we get to dissect this situation on the Naira free fall. I mean, this is something that has been going up and down. It's been fluctuating for the longest time. And we were hoping, there was so much hope in the month of April, where from the beginning of the month, Naira started regaining its value, even got to a time when Naira was about 1,000, I think 72 Naira. And a lot of people, even speculators, were hoping that at the end of April, we'll witness Naira, serving to the dollar for about 900 Naira. And that was the hope. But then all of a sudden, it took a turn. And because of that turn, it took us way back. It took us way back to how it all started, which is, taking, even though before March 20th, Naira was up to 1,600 and something Naira per dollar. But then, having the fact that we have been excited about all of these things, all of a sudden, it went back to where it started, and it's really disheartening, and there is still fear of that happening again. I mean, the Naira growing or rather losing its value to the extent that will definitely not have any value to it. So one of the fears right now is that the CBN are saying the change was the at least increment of interest rate that has affected the value of the Naira, and it rose the Naira value to at least some extent. But then right now, even with the rate being increased, it's still, fluctuating. And right now it's losing its value again. So now they're thinking to increase the rate. And if they should increase the rate while we're pushing for the Naira to have some value, Nigerians are going to face more difficulty with all of this. And definitely want to hear an expert dissect all of this situation on this report. All right, we have Steve Nwachukwu now virtually. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me once again.
Of course, it's good to have you, Steve. So, as you know, Naira has experienced some weakness in the month of April, 2024. So, with everything happening, what is your take? Like, can you give us an overview of what affected the Naira just within this span of 1 month?
Okay, thank you. I think it's becoming increasingly difficult for some of us to be able to point to the real direction and what possibly will be the outcome, given the inconsistencies and some of the failed attempts of propaganda that we've witnessed on the side of the government, the fiscal policy and monetary policy managers. Because the primary determinant of an exchange rate or the movement of the exchange rate is the demand and supply pressure. So as much as you have lower supply of forex to the market, expect the exchange or the naira to depreciate. When you have sufficient supply to the market, expect the naira to regain. That is the pull. That is the force of demand and supply. Why I earlier said that it's becoming increasingly difficult for some of us to understand what is actually happening within our own exchange market is because of the nature and the increasing number of speculative and propagandist activities that we witness. Recently, I had the pleasure to appear in one of your sister stations when we had this Goldman Sachs report in regards to the gains of the Naira. And I did say that it asked the fundamental questions. What is actually happening? And that has proven and have been vindicated in this regards that it was a paid job. Those guys, it was a failed propaganda. They paid those researchers to make such speculations or permutations that Naira is going to fall less than 1,000, and with some level of deliberate activities from the CBN by making deliberate supply and pegging the price. If you witness, there was a consistency in supply to the BDCs, and CBN was pegging the price to the point they couldn't make sufficient supply anymore. So back to your question, what has really happened within our own exchange market that is beginning to wonder what is really going on? Now, we can make 3 to 4 assumptions, having understood that the primary determinant of the rates is the force of demand and supply, given the fact that there are other fundamentals that relates to your GDP growth that determines your exchange, the unemployment or the employment ratio, and with regards to also your inflationary figures. These are basic fundamental factors that determines an exchange rate. But let's make 3 to 4 assumptions that what might have happened in this couple of weeks, where we saw the regains in April, and now we are also seeing the price retracting back to the original price when we saw such good performance of the Naira. Now, first assumption will be, in build up to April, March, ending of March, April, we saw a deliberate supply of forex to the market. That must have happened. That is the first assumption. Now we are seeing an increase. The second assumption in conjunction to that is now we are seeing an increased demand. You cannot take away the supply end to the demand end. When the exchange rate rose to somewhere around 1,800, 1,900, we saw a compressed demand of forex. Some manufacturers had unsold goods and they cannot buy at that exchange rate because they cannot be able to sell their product. So there was a contraction in the side of the demand. Now we are seeing an increased demand because perhaps the price have dropped to somewhere around 1,213. Now demand is coming up again and is causing the present rise we have seen. Then liquidity. There was a deliberate supply, like I said earlier. Now there is no sufficient supply as we speak. That is why the price is returning to about 1,000. In fact, it's approaching 1,500. Then the activities, the third assumption is the activities of speculators have also resumed. Before now, we witness a crackdown on some of these BDCs. Activities within the Binance, we witnessed that some of the directors of Binance was arrested and they are being prosecuted. These are the activities of these very speculators. We witnessed it in the month of April. So now is assuming that these guys have resumed in the activities again, the speculators that is driving most of this trade, because in the real sense of it, a currency should not depreciate to even the tune of 10% within 2 weeks. because the aggregate supply and demand is what determines the exchange rate. You cannot tell me that we have had an excess demand in this last 2-3 weeks, because there should be some level of coordinated demand, because I know all manufacturers don't hit the market at the same time. So who is creating this very increase in the demand that is forcing the Naira to depreciate? That is on their hand. That is the third assumption. While the fourth assumption, like I said earlier, is the failed propaganda that this government have given this posture of running to media, getting some signbirds, hiring people who will make wrong assumptions and wrong speculations on what will be the exchange rate, which I could point to the fact that the Goldman Sachs report seems like it's a harsh job, and we are driving it alongside with the CBN deliberate supply and pegging of the exchange rate. You remember when CBN makes supply to the BDCs, it pegs the price, it pegs the exchange rate. That was what we saw. So these are the 3 or 4 assumptions that possibly tells us what actually happened in this last 6 weeks or 8 weeks that witnessed the up and down of the Naira. Thank you.
All right, Steve, I mean, you're an expert in the financial world. Let's talk about who are these people responsible for this? I mean, based on the speculations that you made mention on, it seems they are economic saboteurs who are, who benefit from the nation's turbulence and downfall. So who are these people? You must have at least some kind of a thought of who these people are and how can they be dealt with?
Of course, definitely. Every one of us should know the activities of these individuals. We may not be able to at least name them who is involved, but we can define their track record. We can define their modus operandi, who could actually fall into this, whether deliberately or intentional or unintentional. Let me tell you, even when people buy dollar, an average person just buy dollar, you are actually indirectly involved in these very activities of speculators. When you buy dollar at 1,003, expecting it to sold at 1,005, you are actually indulging. So I may not be able to name individuals, but we can put those individuals in one basket and tell you, yes, these are the individuals or the economic saboteurs. Some are doing it intentionally, and some are doing it unintentionally. Some are just doing it for the sake of making money, while some are doing it to sabotage the exchange and the economy of Nigeria. Let's take it to the larger scale. Those individuals who actually on daily basis mop up dollar, expecting dollar or Naira to fall or to rise to somewhere where they can make marginal gains. These are the criminals. These are the individuals that government needs to put policies to make sure they curtail their activities. Now, you can't take away also the vulnerability of our exchange market, in the sense that we are not like a strong or large economy. A small volume of dollar, like a $1 billion inflow or outflow, can actually move the rate, in the sense that a $1 billion purchase or demand can actually direct the movement. Remember also that we have allowed the activities of the unofficial markets to determine the rates over time. It didn't start with this very present administration. We have witnessed where we allow the parallel market to be the sole determinant of the exchange rate. You remember the past CBN continued to say that the activities of the BDCs and the unofficial malams in the streets are inconsequential, and I actually said they should be consequential, in the sense that the volumes of activities that goes on there determine one way or the other where your rate is. So nobody should say that the activities of the BDCs or activities of the parallel market players are inconsequential. And you also have some levels of lapses, individuals that place in the side of the CBN, those staffs, those top management staff of CBN who gets allocations and channel this allocation to certain individuals than supplying directly to the manufacturers who actually need this dollar. These are also the level or the cadre of individuals that are involved in these saboteurs or involved in this speculation. When you run trip you deliberately sell or allocate dollar from the CBN end. You deliberately allocate it to a man you know has no need for dollar, but just the essence of making extra money. When you sell at a certain rate and it comes to the BDCs and sells, and the manufacturer now will come to the BDC to buy. So these are another cadre of individual who also involved in this economic saboteur, which is called speculation. So then you also have the activities of those who perhaps are the enemies of this nation, who deliberately buy against your currency to make sure that Naira is weakened. I can't be able to classify who actually could be this individual, but there are still individuals who on daily basis watch our currencies and make sure they buy against it and make sure that it loses value on daily or weekly basis. So these are the classes or levels of individuals who are involved and can be traced, who are involved in this very currency racketeering or currency round tripping that have caused our exchange rate to fall to this very low or to fall to its very news as we speak. In the last 2-3 weeks or 4 weeks now, we witnessed over 26%. Now, the Bloomberg report that you talked about says that it's the worst performing exchange in the world. 3 weeks ago, they came up and said it is the best performing. So what has happened that we could have such a sharp divide or sharp fall or sharp rise? That is why I say that these activities of these speculators, and also on the side of the government, it seems that government embarked in a counterproductive propaganda.
All right, exactly. Steve, let's talk about this counterproductive. Let's talk about the responsibility of the federal government now. I mean, CBN for the past month now have been pushing and making some sort of changes in order to at least increase the value of the Naira. So with this turn, this suave and swift return, it has put in more pressure on the CBN. We've seen also, I think, late last week, where they made mention that any transactions within Nigeria and even outside Nigeria, if it has to deal with somebody in Nigeria, it should be done in Naira rather than in dollar, at least to raise the currency. So where did the CBN go wrong with all of these plans?
Well, it seems based on administrative measures that CBN have taken, it's quite commendable. Most of these measures perhaps is directed to tackle these very individuals that we say that identify that intentionally or unintentionally is classified as one of the economic saboteurs that have actually caused what we are witnessing, the flotation in our exchange market. So with these very administrative directives, or with the activities also we've seen from the side of the EFCC issuing out directives or circulars, restricting people, dollarizing the activities in this very our economic space. So they are quite good measures that CBN have taken in that regard. But what we also have seen in their goods, they have also done one or two couple of things that perhaps is not giving the right impressions or not giving the right suggestions with this aspect of the failed propaganda they engage in. Deliberate supply is good, but you have to be consistent and you have to do it in a transparent way. Beyond the transparency, you have to give the real impression, not when you want to achieve a 20% appreciation of Naira, while in reality, you know that Naira have not gained 20%, but you just want to give Nigerians a false hope. That is the angle I say that CBN also got it wrong. If you know for sure you don't have the volume of dollar to defend Naira from somewhere around 1,006 to 1,007 to 1,001, you should have stopped somewhere around 1,003 or 1,004 than to give a false impression that Naira, there is a adequate supply or influx of dollar that could defend these rates that you are selling to BDCs. So it shows that it was unrealistic. There was nobody to sell. There was no transaction going on around this 1,001 or 1,100 or 1,000 Naira. So that was why you saw the retraction. It reversed itself because it was a false impression of false figures or false numbers that CBN wanted to drive. We needed to do it in a fundamental, in a realistic manner by making sure that it's an adequate supply of dollar, not force supply, where you give 10,000 to BDCs and you are giving impression that is the new exchange rate. When the manufacturers who need $1 million, $500,000, $200,000 are not getting it. So that is where I think CBN also got it wrong. You should have made sure that you attract the required forex. We had attracted around 1.5 or $600 million in this couple of days or weeks we are talking about. Where are these dollars? So these are the things that CBN needs to be coming at stage by stage, sequence by sequence, giving us the right impression. Remember, my problem here is not that they've not done good trade measures to make sure they curtail these activities of speculators. Like I do say, yes, CBN may have also curtailed the activities of currency racketeers, those who involve in round tripping from the side of CBN staffs and senior top management. Perhaps that is what gave rise to most of these regains that we witnessed in the last couple of weeks. But can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sure.
Okay. Yes, so, but given the fact that they had good intention to return the exchange or Naira to a very reasonable price, even somewhere lower 900 is good intention. But how you went about it is what is not good. Giving false impression that is a flow of forex to the market. That was where they got it wrong. They should have attracted those foreign investors inflow of forex before they engage in this very crazy drive of trying to get back Naira at 1,000, because you can't do it. Like I said, I know I laid emphasis or established the fact that what determines the rate is a force of demand and supply. Where you have an increased supply, definitely the price or the exchange rate on Naira will gain. When you have an increase or the demand surpasses the supply, you will witness that the exchange rate will depreciate or Naira will depreciate. So we should have made some fundamental moves first to make sure we have adequate supply, liquidity, supply in the system before we try in this very false hope that we gave Nigerians that Naira have really regained. Thank you.
Indeed. I mean, there's so much I want to hear your take on, but then I think you dissected, this current situation as it is. And I hope that the natural or the people that are supposed to, take care of all of this, the stakeholders, pick on some of the key advice that you dropped. Appreciate your time joining us to dissect this. Steve Nwachukwu, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
Of course.